When foreign animals are introduced into new environments, the results can be pretty devastating. From rabbits overrunning entire continents to invasive species destroying delicate ecosystems, today I'm counting down 15 invasions that went totally out of control. Let's start with number 15, Florida iguanas. The green iguana is an invasive species in South Florida, hailing from Central and South America. Now, unlike native species, these reptiles were introduced into the area through the exotic pet trade. Over time, escaped or abandoned pets established these wild populations that have grown rapidly due to Florida's favorable subtropical climate. Now, green iguanas are large reptiles with males reaching up to 7 feet in length and weighing as much as 17 pounds. Their presence has expanded dramatically, with sightings across the state, from Gainesville to Key West, far beyond their initial foothold in Miami-Dade County. These reptiles sunbathe unperturbed in public spaces, making them a common sight, unlike the blackouts such as the infamous 2018 incident in Key West, where a single iguana triggered a 10-minute outage. Number 14, the spotted lanternfly. The spotted lanternfly, it's an invasive insect that originated from China and has rapidly spread across parts of Asia and the eastern United States. First discovered in Pennsylvania in 2014, these sap-sucking insects have wreaked havoc on agricultural crops. These spotted lanternflies go through 4 wingless stages called instars before reaching adulthood. In their early instars, they're black with white spots, transitioning to a red and black body with white spots before developing wings. Now, adult lanternflies are roughly about an inch long with distinctive gray wings marked with black spots and a bright red underwing. That beauty, though, belies the destruction they bring. The biggest threat comes from their secretion of honeydew, a sugary substance that fosters the growth of sooty mold, a fungal disease that blocks sunlight and disrupts photosynthesis. A major spotted lanternfly's population has exploded, and while cold winters can reduce their numbers, warmer climates have allowed them to thrive, and they continue spreading further across the U.S., with sightings even in Kansas, Utah, and California. Number 13, the boars of Rome. Rome has defended itself from plenty of invaders in its day, but today it faces a peculiar problem, an invasion by wild boars. These animals have become a common sight in the city, rummaging through the streets in search of food, particularly attracted by Rome's overflowing garbage bins. What was once a phenomenon confined to the countryside has now become an urban crisis, raising concerns about public safety, sanitation, and urban management. The wild boar problem in Rome can be traced back to the city's unique geography and long-standing waste management issues. Rome is surrounded by vast natural parks, which house thousands of wild boars. The city's proximity to these green spaces, combined with its chronic despite those efforts, their numbers continue to swell, with an estimated 23,000 wild boars around the city and surrounding area. Videos of boars rummaging through trash bins, marching past stores, or strolling near playgrounds have gone viral, turning this crisis into an ongoing spectacle. While some find humor in the situation, the reality is far more dangerous. Number 12, Shanghai raccoon dogs. So in recent years, the city of Shanghai has faced an unexpected wildlife challenge, a sudden surge in the population of raccoon dogs. These nocturnal creatures, native to the Yangtze River Delta region, resemble raccoons in appearance but are more closely related to foxes. Traditionally, they lived on the outskirts of Shanghai, keeping mostly to themselves. However, as of 2024, the city's home to between 3,000 to 5,000 raccoon dogs, a massive increase from just a few thousand in 2019. What started as a manageable population has ballooned into an urban wildlife issue, with them less time to build up fat reserves before the next cold season. In search of warmer temperatures and more abundant food sources, these animals have ventured further into urban areas. In fact, studies have shown that poor garbage management can lead to a 100% increase in raccoon dog encounters. The ready availability of food has allowed these animals to thrive in the city, further encouraging their migration from rural areas to urban spaces. Number 11, Russian polar bears. In late 2019, a remote Russian village found itself in the middle of a startling and unprecedented wildlife invasion. A small settlement of around 500 people in the far eastern Chukotka region suddenly became host to an unexpected group of visitors, about 60 polar bears. These massive predators descended upon the village in search of food, driven from their usual hunting grounds by the rapidly changing climate and the melting ice in the Arctic. The invasion, while alarming, highlights the growing challenges faced by both humans and wildlife, made it a natural destination for the hungry bears, who found sustenance in the form of walrus carcasses left on the shore from the fall. But even this source of food wasn't enough to sustain the influx of these bears, many of which were visibly thin, with females and their cubs desperately searching for sustenance. The village did take swift action, organizing bear patrols and arranging for children to be transported to school by bus to minimize the risk of encounters. Armed volunteers kept watch over key areas, including schools and kindergartens, to protect against any potential threats. Luckily, though, everyone made it out okay. Number 10. Miami's peacocks. Miami's Coconut Grove, a neighborhood famous for its bohemian charm and lush tropical streets, has been facing an unexpected invasion of beautiful, yet problematic neighbors, peacocks. While these exotic birds might seem like a stunning addition to the vibrant Miami landscape, their presence has led to a conflict that pits the beauty of nature against the daily two sprawling estates. Their numbers grew steadily, and by the 2000s, the neighborhood was swarming with hundreds of peacocks. With no natural predators to keep their population in check and protection under local ordinances, the birds have found Miami to be an ideal sanctuary. The warm tropical climate offers them a perfect habitat, and human development provides plenty of food sources, whether from gardens, garbage, or intentional feeding by some residents. The situation began to escalate in the last decade, with peacock numbers ballooning in certain neighborhoods, most notably Bay Heights and Coconut Grove. Once the population reached critical mass, their impact became impossible to ignore. Residents reported packs of peacocks, sometimes numbering 20 to 40 birds, wandering through the streets, screeching at all hours of the night and leaving a mess wherever they roamed. The males' courtship displays, once a rare and captivating sight, became a constant disruption, with their loud cries echoing through the neighborhood. To disrupt urban life, the penguin colony at Simonstown has settled into a peaceful and balanced relationship with its human neighbors. The sight of these waddling birds strolling along the shores of Boulder's Beach has become an iconic experience, drawing tourists from around the world. But this wasn't always the case. How did this unlikely penguin colony come to live side by side with humans? And how has it shaped the landscape and community of Simonstown? Well, the African penguins of Simonstown first established themselves in 1982, a relatively recent event considering the area's long history as a naval town. The penguins are native to the southern African coastline, ranging from Namibia down to the southern tip of South Africa. However, they didn't always call the mainland home. For centuries, these penguins bred primarily on islands, where they were far from land-based predators. But the colony at Simonstown began to flourish after industrial fishing in False Bay was banned in the early 1980s. The fishing prohibition increased the availability of the penguins' primary food, sardines, and thousands of penguins flocking to the area. By April, the colony reaches its peak, as up to 1,000 breeding pairs set up nests along Boulder's Beach and nearby residential gardens. These penguins nest close to human homes, their chicks popping up in backyards and along fences, a sight that's become somewhat normal in this small South African town. I'm gonna get me a penguin. Number 8. Ladybug Bloom. It was a warm and seemingly uneventful summer evening in Southern California in 2019. The skies were mostly clear, and the meteorologists at the National Weather Service were settling into what they expected to be a typical night of weather monitoring. That's when their radar screens began to show something strange. A massive looming green blob appeared, resembling a mild rainstorm. Yet there was no storm in the forecast. The radar's reflection indicated that something unusual was taking shape in the sky. But what could it be? A strange atmospheric anomaly? An incoming front? These ladybugs weren't just meandering around through the air. They were on the move en masse, forming a cloud that spread across 10 miles, flying at an altitude of up to 1.5 miles above the ground. Ladybug swarms aren't a new occurrence, but what exactly drives these tiny beetles to take to the skies in such numbers isn't really well known. Known scientifically as Hippodamia convergens, or the convergent lady beetle, these insects are common throughout California. Each year, as the season changes, the beetles migrate between the lush, food-filled valleys and the cooler mountain regions. It's during these migratory periods that large swarms can form, especially when food sources like aphids begin to dwindle in the valleys or when temperatures rise in their current habitats. While ladybug swarms are common, they're rarely seen on such a grand scale. Typically, swarms might involve tens of thousands or even hundreds of thousands of beetles. These swarms can span across several miles but are usually more concentrated and not easily noticed unless one is in the thick of it. Activity and gradually formed feral populations. Then in the early 1900s, the introduction of Eurasian wild boars for sport hunting added another layer to the wild pig saga. Today, these wild pigs roaming across the countryside are a mix of domestic and wild boar lineage, resulting in a hybrid creature that thrives across a diverse range of environments. Feral pigs are remarkably prolific, contributing to their rapid spread throughout the country. Female pigs can begin breeding as early as 8 months old and have the potential to produce 2 litters each year, each litter averaging around 8 to 12 piglets. This high reproductive rate allows feral pig populations to grow explosively, making it challenging to control their numbers. Over time, their populations have swelled to an estimated 6 to 9 million pigs, distributed across at least 42 states and 3 territories. But the areas most heavily impacted by this invasion are concentrated. Feral pigs are not picky eaters. Their diet includes everything from plant roots to small mammals, and even endangered species such as loggerhead sea turtles. This predation threatens biodiversity, reducing populations of native species and altering the balance in their habitats. Their activity also extends to an archaeological site, where their rooting can cause irreparable damage to ancient artifacts and remains. I guess they'll eat anything, even history. Number 6. Crows of Japan. In the urban landscapes of Japan, in bustling cities like Tokyo, a battle rages against a particularly cunning foe, the crow. The species at the heart of this conflict is primarily the carrion crow and its close relatives, the jungle crow. Now, unlike their western counterparts, these crows are larger, with a distinctive thick bill and a raucous caw that reverberates through the concrete canyons of the metropolis. The proliferation of crows in Japan can be traced back to a combination of factors that have allowed infrastructure. They're notorious for nesting in utility poles, causing power outages and even stealing fiber optic cables for their nests. In response to the growing crisis, Tokyo has initiated a multifaceted strategy to mitigate their impact. The city has invested millions in improving garbage disposal methods to make waste less accessible to the birds. Trash bins are redesigned to be more crow-proof, but this only has limited effectiveness. One of the more extreme measures, though, has been the use of crow traps. These large cages baited with lard are designed to lure birds inside. Once trapped, crows are subjected to a grim fate. They're transported away and gassed every few days. Despite these efforts, though, the effectiveness of these measures is a bit dubious as the crow population continues to rise. And interestingly, an unconventional approach has emerged from the Ginza honeybee project, which keeps hives on the rooftops of central Tokyo. The project's founders claim that the 300,000 honeybees help repel crows. This is to shutter and posing serious safety concerns for residents and tourists. The delicate balance between the humans and wildlife in this monkey city has been irrevocably altered, leading to chaos in both social and economic realms. The rise of the macaque menace can be traced back to the onset of the COVID-19 pandemic, which brought a dramatic decline in tourism. As visitors flocked to Lopburi to interact and feed with the monkeys, the economic downturn resulted in fewer food sources for the primates. This sudden deprivation triggered a shift in their behavior without the steady handouts from tourists. Videos documenting their antics, including theft and outright aggression towards locals, circulated widely on social media, amplifying fears about safety in the city. However, the same animals that once attracted visitors now threaten to render the city a ghost town. Local businesses report extensive property damage caused by marauding macaques, and many shop owners face costly repairs from vandalism. Surachat Chanprasit, the deputy city, now serves as a reminder of the chaos that can ensue when the wildlife populations exceed their environmental carrying capacity. In response to this escalating monkey crisis, local authorities have initiated various control measures aimed at managing the population. Mass sterilization programs have been established to prevent any further breeding, while large traps baited with food have been deployed to capture and relocate the monkeys. These kinds of traps aim to exploit the monkeys' natural curiosity and hunger. Additionally, the innovative deterrent strategies have emerged, such as the Ginza Honeybee Project, which utilize aggressive bees to keep those monkeys at bay. Boy, those bees are pretty cool. Number 4. Everglades pythons. Florida's unique ecosystems face an insidious threat from the Burmese python, a non-native species that has rapidly become one of the state's most notorious invasive predators. Originating from Southeast Asia, these pythons are not indigenous to Florida. They were introduced into the region primarily through the